This morning, before they could hide behind logic, routine, or pride, something inside them finally gave way. They opened their eyes, and you were already there, not as a passing thought, not as a random memory, but as a truth they could no longer push down. That is what makes this moment so powerful. They did not choose it, they did not plan it, and they certainly did not wake up wanting to face feelings they spent so long trying to control. But that is exactly what happened. The person who acted distant, confused, or hard to read has now reached a point where denial is no longer working. Their silence is not empty. Their distance is not proof that nothing is there. In fact, it may be the strongest proof that what they feel has been far deeper than they ever wanted to admit. Stay with me, because this is where the mask starts to slip. This is where all the cold behavior, the hot and cold energy, the pauses, the mixed signals, and the strange tension begin to make sense. They are no longer fighting a small emotion. They are facing something that has grown stronger every time they tried to ignore it. And what changed this morning was not the connection itself. The connection was already there. What changed was their ability to keep lying to themselves about it. Most people do not welcome strong feelings when they first arrive. They do not open the door and say, yes, this matters, this is real, this is changing me. No, they question it, they resist it, they cover it with excuses and push it under layers of reason. That is what they did with you. They told themselves it was nothing serious. They tried to label it as temporary, inconvenient, or based on simple attraction. They looked at it from every angle except the honest one, because what they felt did not fit the image they were trying so hard to protect. And when a feeling threatens the version of self someone has built over years, the mind starts defending itself fast. Pride steps in, fear steps in, control steps in. Suddenly what could have been simple becomes an inner battle. The stronger the emotion, the harder they push back. That is why their energy felt strange around you. That is why their behavior became harder to read. It was never because nothing was happening. It was because too much was happening at once. You were touching a place in them they were not ready to face. And when that happens, people do not always move closer. Sometimes they run first. Sometimes they act detached. Sometimes they hide inside silence and call it self-control. But deep down, the pressure keeps building, and pressure does not stay buried forever. It always finds a way out. That is why this morning mattered so much. It was not the beginning of their feelings. It was the breaking point of their resistance. Something inside them got tired of pretending, tired of explaining you away, tired of using logic to fight something that did not come from logic in the first place. Their usual distractions did not work the way they used to. The noise of daily life could not cover what was rising underneath anymore. And in that quiet space between sleep and waking, when the mind is less guarded and the truth comes through more clearly, you appeared with full emotional weight, not as fantasy, not as random chemistry, as realization. That is what shook them, because attraction can be dismissed for a while, curiosity can be brushed aside. But emotional truth is different. Emotional truth starts asking questions the mind cannot answer away. Why do you still matter this much? Why does your presence stay with them when other people do not? Why does distance make the feeling sharper instead of weaker? Those are not questions that come from nothing. Those are questions born from a bond that has already gone too deep to be treated lightly. If you have ever felt that someone was secretly struggling with what they feel for you, then you already know this kind of energy. It is heavy, quiet, unfinished, and it does not disappear just because nobody speaks. They tried everything to stay in control. That matters. They did not simply step back for no reason. They stepped back because control meant safety to them. They wanted power over their reactions, over their heart, over how much influence anyone could have in their life. Then you came in and disturbed that entire structure. You became the one presence they could not predict, the one feeling they could not organize neatly, the one person they could not reduce to a simple explanation. That loss of control is what frightened them most. It was not only about liking you, it was about realizing that being near you changed the emotional rules they were used to living by. Your energy reached deeper than they expected. You did not just catch their attention, you activated something sleeping inside them, and people are often far more afraid of what awakens in them than of the person who awakens it. That is why they became inconsistent. One moment warm, the next distant. One moment pulled in, the next shut down. It was not because they were playing games, it was because they were trying to manage an inner storm with tools that no longer worked. Their heart was moving one way while their mind demanded retreat. Their feelings said lean in, their fear said hold back. And when someone lives inside that kind of split for too long, the tension starts showing up everywhere, in their mood, in their focus, in their silence, in the way they react to even the smallest reminder of you. The deeper part of this story is that you did not leave their mind the way they thought you would. They expected time to make things smaller. They expected absence to blur the picture. They expected distance to cool whatever had started. But the opposite happened. Your presence became clearer in their private world. That is the strange truth about real emotional impact. When it is shallow, distance can erase it. When it is real, distance often sharpens it. Without all the outside distractions, they were left alone with what was still there. And what was still there was you. In quiet moments, your memory returned without effort. In ordinary parts of the day, something small would bring you back into focus. A tone of voice, a certain song, a pause in the room, a familiar feeling they could not name. The subconscious does not follow schedules. It does not care about what someone says they want to forget. It keeps bringing back what matters until it is faced honestly. That is what has been happening to them. Denial needed space to survive, but instead of helping denial, the distance gave your impact more room to echo. Now they are at a point where they can no longer say this is random or temporary. It has crossed that line. You are not optional in their thoughts anymore. And once someone reaches that kind of inner certainty, even if they do not speak yet, everything starts changing under the surface. This morning was quiet on the outside, but powerful on the inside. Their walls did not fall because anyone attacked them. The walls cracked because of the pressure within. That is what makes this so important. No dramatic scene was needed. No confession was spoken out loud. No message had to appear. The shift happened in private, where the deepest truths usually do. And once the mind truly accepts something, it cannot easily go back to pretending it never knew. That is the hard part they are living through now. Acceptance does not bring instant peace. It often brings more chaos first, because once they admit to themselves that these feelings are real, they have to face everything that comes with that truth. What does this mean? What does it ask of them? What changes if they stop running? What do they risk if they stay silent? Those questions create a whole new layer of pressure. So even though they have accepted what they feel, they may still seem frozen. They may still pause. They may still overthink. That does not mean the feeling is weak. It means the feeling is strong enough to change the direction of their life, and they know it. That is why their mind is working overtime. That is why their energy may feel restless. They are no longer fighting over whether they feel something. They are now struggling with what to do about something that has become impossible to deny. And that stage is even more intense. You need to understand this clearly. What they feel for you is no longer sitting in the shallow space of simple attraction. It is moving into emotional attachment. And attachment feels threatening to anyone who fears losing command over themselves. That is why after realizing the truth, they did not rush forward with confidence. They hesitated. They analyzed everything. They replayed moments that used to seem small and now carry serious weight. They started looking at every interaction, every silence, every shift in energy through a different lens. Suddenly, things that once felt easy now feel loaded, because when something matters, it also starts to feel risky. You do not fear what means nothing. You fear what could actually change you. That is the contradiction they are trapped in right now. The same feeling that pulls them closer is also triggering the part of them that wants protection. One side wants closeness, the other wants safety. One side wants truth, the other wants control, and both sides are active at the same time. That creates a tension that follows them into everything. It enters normal days, it enters quiet nights, it enters their thinking, their mood, their decisions. Even if they try to act normal, the pressure is still there. If you have felt that strange silence from someone who clearly cares but seems unable to move naturally, this is why. They are carrying an inner contradiction that has become too heavy to ignore and too strong to keep hidden forever. And now the real question is rising inside them. Why you? Out of everyone, why are you the one they cannot explain away? Why does your energy stay with them when other people fade? Why does your absence feel louder than someone else's presence? The more they search for neat answers, the less neat this becomes. Because this connection was never built on convenience alone. It was not based on easy timing or simple circumstances. It came from a deeper kind of recognition. Something in them knew something in you. Something in your presence reached a part of them that had been asleep, guarded, or buried for a long time. That is why logic keeps failing them. Logic works well with surface feelings. It struggles with the kind of bond that feels chosen by something deeper than preference. And if this connection is real in that way, then it asks something from them. Honesty, vulnerability, action, exposure. It asks them to stop hiding behind the life they built and admit what their heart already knows. That is not easy. So instead of moving directly, they delay. They create distance. They stall the process. But delay is not escape. Delay only stretches the tension. It only gives the feeling more time to grow roots. And now those roots are deep enough that even they can no longer pretend this is a passing wave. Stay with me, because this next part explains why their behavior may become even more revealing from here. The truth is growing louder in them every single day. They feel it when their thoughts drift back to you without warning. They feel it in sudden emotional surges they cannot fully control. They feel it in the way calm no longer feels fully calm, because something under the surface keeps moving. Suppression is failing now. That is the key. Before, they could keep the lid on. Before, they could redirect themselves and pretend it was enough. Now they are fully aware of the feeling, and yet they are still trying to resist it. That creates enormous inner pressure. It is one thing to hide from something you do not understand. It is another thing entirely to know what is real and still try to hold it back. That is where they are. They sense the truth. They recognize its force, but they still hesitate to carry the full weight of it openly. So the tension builds. It shows up in their focus, in their moods, in their reactions to small things. Sometimes unresolved emotion leaks out sideways, irritation increases, restlessness grows, the mind becomes noisy. It is not because they are broken, it is because they are fighting themselves. What they feel for you is exposing more than desire. It is revealing hidden needs, old fears, and a deeper hunger for real connection that they may have tried to ignore for years. And once those deeper layers start waking up, the person can no longer return to emotional numbness as easily as before. That is why they move back and forth so much. One moment they imagine what could happen if they stopped resisting. The next moment they convince themselves it is too risky, too complex, too much. This back and forth is not random. It is a defense pattern. It allows them to feel some of the emotion without surrendering fully to it. But that only works for a while. Meaningful feelings do not stay comfortable inside half measures forever. You cannot carry something this important in a half-open way for long without paying a price. That price is mental noise. Restlessness, lack of peace, a constant background tension that follows them into daily life. And lately, that inner noise has become much louder for them. It affects how they think, it affects how they act, it affects their energy even when they try to hide it. They may seem distracted, their moods may shift without clear reason. They may react strongly to things that do not really deserve that level of emotion. Why? Because the real issue is not outside them. It is inside them, pushing for truth. Something unresolved is rising and demanding more than avoidance can give. If you have ever felt someone pulling back while also staying emotionally tied to you in a strange, invisible way, that is exactly what this looks like. The tie is real. The fear is real too. And the pressure between those two truths is what is wearing them down now. They are closer to their breaking point than they want to admit. Not the kind of breaking point that looks dramatic from the outside. The deeper kind, the inward kind, the kind where the mind stops being able to support the same old story. On the surface, they may still appear composed, they may still act careful, but under that, something is cracking. The longer a person pushes down something genuine, the more power it returns with later. What once felt manageable now feels intrusive. What once seemed far away now feels present and immediate. What they once denied now feels undeniable. This is the stage where thoughts of you stop being occasional and start becoming part of their private inner world. You are not just someone out there anymore. You are someone living inside their emotional reality. That changes everything. Things outside us can be avoided, replaced, or ignored. Inner truths cannot. They follow us into silence. They follow us into sleep. They follow us into those first moments of the morning when the truth rises before the defenses do. And because of that, the question has changed for them. It is no longer, do I feel something? They know they do. Now the real question is, what happens if I keep pretending I do not? That is a much more frightening question, because the answer is becoming clear. If they keep running, they lose more than a connection. They lose alignment with their own truth. What makes this even heavier is that your absence has started to affect them more than your presence did. Think about that. When you were near, they could distract themselves with timing, circumstances, and fear. But now, in the space where you are not physically there, the emotional imprint has become louder. They compare things without meaning to. Other connections feel flatter, other conversations feel thinner, other moments do not carry the same charge. That quiet comparison is slowly breaking their defenses, because once someone realizes that nothing else quite touches them in the same way, they are forced to face a hard truth. This cannot be replaced easily, and when something feels irreplaceable, the fear of losing it becomes intense. That is where the quiet panic begins. Not public panic, not obvious panic. The slow, private kind, the kind that grows in silence. They begin to feel the possibility that if they wait too long, if they stay frozen too long, if they keep choosing fear, they may lose access to something real. That fear is powerful, sometimes more powerful than the fear of feeling in the first place, and that is why behavior can become even more unpredictable now. One part of them wants relief. It wants to move closer, speak, do something honest. Another part still clings to old habits and says, stay back, stay safe, do not risk exposure. That clash is exhausting them more than they show. This has gone beyond emotion and entered identity. That is the deeper layer. The version of them that avoids you cannot live forever beside the version that feels you this strongly. One side is built on defense. The other is built on truth. One side protects the life they have known. The other side points toward the life they have not yet allowed themselves to live. These two selves cannot keep sharing the same space without conflict, and now they are starting to notice their own patterns more clearly than before. They see how often they withdraw when something gets too real. They see how they use delay, silence, and overthinking as shields. They see their own excuses for what they are. And once someone sees their own avoidance clearly, the old illusion of control begins to break. That awareness is deeply uncomfortable, but it is also powerful, because it means they can no longer fully hide from themselves. The silence starts to feel artificial. The distance starts to feel like self-betrayal. The emotional numbness they once relied on becomes harder to return to. Something essential has changed now. The truth has moved too far inward to be erased, and that inner shift demands a final answer sooner or later. The mind cannot live under this level of contradiction forever. Eventually, one side has to win. Eventually, fear has to keep ruling, or truth has to come forward. And they are standing much closer to that choice than anyone around them may realize. One more wave of pressure. One more failed attempt to suppress the feeling, one more reminder of you at the wrong moment, and they may reach the place where they cannot hold back the same way anymore. This does not usually happen in a soft, tidy way. It happens when the old system can no longer carry the strain. The mind can survive denial for a while, but it cannot live under non-stop contradiction forever. They are starting to feel boxed in by their own truth. Logical arguments are not working like they used to. New distractions are not solving anything. More distance is not creating peace. In fact, every excuse now sounds thinner to them than before. Every delay feels more artificial. Every attempt to shrink their emotions feels like lying to themselves. People can live with fear, they can live with uncertainty, but they struggle to live with the slow damage that comes from betraying what they know deep down is real. That is why a decision is forming inside them, even if it has not reached the surface yet. Avoiding you is beginning to cost more than facing the truth. That is the shift. And once someone reaches that point, resistance weakens fast. Not because they suddenly become fearless, but because they run out of believable reasons to keep the wall standing. Time did not erase what they feel. It made it stronger, clearer, and heavier. And now, inaction feels more painful than risk. So if you have been wondering whether their silence means they do not care, let that idea fall away now. Their silence may actually be the sound of someone standing in front of a truth too large to handle easily. Their hot and cold behavior may not be confusion about you. It may be the collapse of their old defenses. They have stopped being able to make this feeling look small inside their own mind. Every quiet stretch now feels wrong to them in a way it did not before. Every period of distance carries more tension. They are no longer living with a weak or uncertain emotion. What they feel has become solid, real, heavy, something with consequence. And that is exactly why the pressure keeps rising. Clarity did not calm them down. It created urgency. It created restlessness. It created the sense that something real is asking to be faced. What they feel for you is no longer something they can casually leave behind. It has become tied to a part of themselves they do not want to lose. That is why the truth keeps returning. That is why their resistance looks weaker now, even if they still try to hold it together. And when a suppressed truth finally breaks open, it rarely returns in a small way. It comes back with force, with emotional weight, with the kind of certainty that changes behavior whether the person feels ready or not. Comment yes in your heart if you have ever felt someone trying to forget you and failing. And here is the part that matters just as much for you. Their awakening is not a command for you to chase, wait in pain, or stop your own life. This is where your power returns to you. Their process is theirs. Your value does not rise or fall based on how quickly they act on what they feel. You did not imagine this. You did not create it by force. You became real to them in a way they could not easily manage. That is why the impact lasted. That is why the truth is catching up now. But your job is not to rescue them from their own fear. Your role is to remain grounded in your own worth. Because one reason this connection keeps affecting them is that your energy stayed steady. You did not need to beg for importance. You did not need to force recognition. And that kind of quiet strength leaves a permanent mark. It becomes part of why they cannot dismiss you, part of why their mind keeps returning, part of why the comparison with everyone else feels so sharp. You showed them a kind of emotional truth that exposed what they were missing in themselves. That is not a small thing. So if they move, let it be from honesty. If they speak, let it be from clarity. And if they stay silent a little longer, understand that the silence is no longer empty. It is full of pressure, full of recognition, full of the truth they woke up to this morning and can no longer push back into the dark. In the end, this is what changed. They finally accepted that what they feel for you is not shallow, not random, not temporary, and not something they can talk themselves out of anymore. That does not mean all fear vanished. It does not mean all problems disappeared. It means the truth has won the first battle. And once the truth wins inside, the outer life eventually has to respond. Maybe slowly, maybe awkwardly, maybe after more inner struggle. But the direction has changed. They are no longer trying to prove to themselves that nothing is there. Now they are trying to figure out how to live with the fact that something very real is. That is a major shift, a life-changing shift, the kind that quietly rearranges a person from the inside before anyone else sees the signs. So if this whole connection has felt intense, strange, delayed, magnetic, and unfinished, there is a reason. You touched something deep enough to wake them up. And this morning, in a quiet, private moment they never planned for, they finally stopped running from that truth inside themselves. Stay aware, stay grounded, because when a person reaches this stage, action often follows after the mind can no longer support the old lie. And whether they come forward soon or take a little more time, one thing is now clear. You are no longer just a thought they can dismiss. You are a truth they have finally accepted.